Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome to V. That is what its creator, Terry Cavanagh, calls it. Although apparently he was okay with people calling it V.
Which is good, because that's... Well, I think I just called it VVVVV.
No, that's not acceptable.
Actually, there's
Anyway.
6, so it should be... Oh, well. Anyway.
So this is a very interesting game, released in 2010. Pretty much the only major game made by Terry Cavanagh. He's made several short games, but none of this extent. This is still itself a short game, though. So this guy in the top right is our main character, Captain Viridian. You may remember him from Super Meat Boy if you've ever played that game.
I have, but
He's a
I
bonus
don't
character.
remember him.
He's a bonus character, one of the ones you can unlock. And he has the same special ability in that game that he has in this one.
Did Terry make this?
No, that was... Terry Cavanagh made this. Edmund Macmillan made Super Meat Boy. It was just a nod. He gave permission, presumably. Anyway, Captain Viridian's special power, which is shared by some others of his species, is the ability to flip. Basically, he can reverse gravity, send him plummeting in the other direction.
Oh, nice.
Fairly useful for a space explorer, I would say. So it makes sense. Anyway, these little sea things we're seeing are checkpoints, of course. This is a little shiny trinket. There's quite a few of these things throughout the game. Getting them all gives you a special reward, but we'll see that at the end.
I thought the Sanctuary actually had a mechanic like this.
Really?
Although there were only... You had to... It was activated at certain points.
Yeah. Anyway, these are computer terminals. We can access them to discover information. This game does have lore. Not much, but... Yeah, anyway, this game is a very interesting style. It's a pixel graphic style very much like the old ZX Spectrum games played in England, or the Commodore 64, for any viewers we have that are old enough to remember that. But it's very, like, blocky color-based, like big shapes, and, you know, some very simple things moving around.
It just...
You'll notice there's no shading on anything. Everything is like a solid block of color.
True. I was gonna say on this Commodore 64, I never had one, but are we old enough to remember it?
Probably not. The Commodore 64's heyday was the 80s. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was not alive.
91 for me.
Careful, Greg. Don't go into too many personal details. This is the internet. Anyway, the thing about Captain Viridian is that there are many hazards, and whenever he takes a single hit from any of them, he will die, sort of. But he'll instantly respawn at any of the checkpoints. So this is a game that is simultaneously, kind of like Super Meat Boy, very punishing, but also very forgiving. Off there to the right is a bonus room that I should have gotten, but we only get it much later.
Hotline Miami had a similar vibe to that.
But anyway, another interesting thing about this game that is similar to the old kind of blocky 8-bit games on the computers is that the rooms have names. You can see them at the bottom. Now, these names were all provided to the game by one of my favorite people, Bennett Foddy, who you might remember created Getting Over It quite a few years after this. Yeah, kind of interesting, actually. Never thought of him as a great writer, but, you know, whatever.
Well, don't you
The names are kind of interesting. They give some personality to it.
Don't you kind of hate Getting Over It?
I do hate Getting Over It. I hate Bennett Foddy, too. But what he did in this game is okay.
Okay.
Anyway, one fun thing you can do with this game's flipping mechanic is flip in time to the music. And there are some real bangers in this soundtrack. This is a fantastic soundtrack, so I will be jamming out every now.
Fair enough.
Anyway, we made it back to the ship because we found a teleporter. And this is Violet. I forget exactly what her title is. Everyone has a title in this game. It might be Pilot Violet or Commander Violet, I'm not sure. She's not a shrinking Violet, that's for sure. She's very brave. So yeah, now we're on their ship. And everyone else is missing. All the 6 members of our crew. Minus us and the one we just found. So 4. So it's interesting. This part shows where they're stuck. We don't know that, but it's sort of cinematic. It's looking ahead. So as Violet tells us, we need to find where they've gone. Violet's found something curious with the ship's scanners. There are these high energy signals that are probably teleporters. Spoiler, they are all teleporters. This game is a very extensive warp room system, which is good, because it means you can go from almost anywhere on the map to anywhere else in like a blink of an eye.
Nice.
Now, this game has a pretty large map, all things considered, for what it is. But at the same time, it's a map that can be explored very quickly, because there's not much to it.
That's good.
So it's kind of like Skyward Sword, but less ambitious than that, so. And in 2D, which works much better. Violet says that verdigris would be a great help in fixing the ship. He's our repair guy, I guess. These terminals just tell us some basic things about the ship. It's interesting, these characters are basically stick figures. They're really simplistic, but they do have a few facial expressions, which, you know, gives them a little bit of personality. More than might be required, you might think. You know, the games this is based on would never have had something like that. They were much more simplistic. Kind of like, you know, if you ever played the arcade game Donkey Kong? The first game really where Mario appeared? Anyway, the point is, in those games, they were so simple that you really couldn't have different facial expressions. This was honestly one of the first games to be on, you know, a modern computer, so it could be more complicated than this, but consciously decided to go with a retro aesthetic. And to a certain extent, retro mechanics. This game has a very simple mechanic set. The complexity comes not from the mechanics you have, but from the level design and the ways you're called upon to use it. So, aside from the two of us, each of the other 4 members we're looking for are going to be in a little separate area with its own unique gimmick to deal with. I'm mostly just screwing around right now, exploring this map. You can see that there's almost nothing to do in the vast majority of rooms in this game. They're literally just areas to travel through, looking for other stuff. You can think of this game as being divided into an overworld and dungeons, even though technically the whole thing is just one big map. They are all just rooms. And of course, the first of these dungeons I find in this playthrough is the tower, which is probably one of the more complicated of all things considered.
Can you get, if the room gets away from you, do you die?
Yes, that's right. There are little spikes you can see coming out of both the top and bottom of the screen. If you get too close to either, the spikes will come out and you will die. So you gotta pace yourself. You can't outrun the screen, but you also can't fall behind. And the tower is very interesting, one of the more complicated parts of the game, and one of the few that requires a certain amount of quick reaction time, rather than just figuring out the puzzle. Actually, I should say, a lot of this game is more reaction time than puzzles. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, by getting that little trinket, I actually missed the last checkpoint, so if I die here before reaching the next one, I'm going to go back quite a long way. Fortunately, I do not. Unfortunately, we now run into one of the most difficult trinkets to get in the game. Well, I actually shouldn't say that. There's some really terribly impossible ones. This is one of the hardest ones that I actually get. Trinkets are technically optional, so I'm not going to be getting them in the main playthrough of this game. We might see a few of them in a bonus video.
Are they worth it?
Well, there's a little bit of a twist on that, so I'll let you know about that later.
Interesting.
Short answer, yes, they are. They're totally worth it. Anyway, what I need to do is get over onto that tiny block on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see it coming into view just now. Without constantly running into the spikes, which is what I do because I keep not paying attention to that side of the screen. And then I need to fall from that onto that little ledge.
Wow.
Right next to the arrows I just saw. Yeah, it requires you to be paying a lot of attention and to have very careful little nudges.
Ooh.
I'm not good at little nudges.
Yeah.
I push Viridian too far. And also I get a little freaked out and make mistakes like that. The only excuse for my mistakes and the reason I'm not cutting here is because this game is so quick.
Yeah.
That you can, like, screw up 20 times and still only be wasting, like, 30 seconds of people's time.
Even so,
One thing I like about this game is that because, kind of like Super Meat Boy, because of the really quick respawning mechanics, and the fact that every run through these things is a little bit different, it encourages replay a lot. So I never really got totally frustrated with this game. There were a few points that are really annoying, but we'll get to those later. Fortunately for me, we do not get to that point in the first video. The tower is one of the more annoying dungeons, all things considered, but it is not really annoying. I actually kind of like scrolling levels. I've heard a lot of people say they dislike them as a leftover from older games, but I never had that much of a problem with them. I like the tension they induce. You know, you could say in any puzzle game that there's really two kinds of puzzle in the game. One is figuring out what to do, and the other is making decisions on the fly, you know, testing your reaction time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with testing your reaction time. It's good, because this game does that a lot. Just keep running into those spikes. The tower is interesting because I didn't realize this at first. I thought maybe it was its own separate area. But if you look on the map later, you will see it's just one gigantic column of rooms.
Oh, God.
So these really do all exist within the context of the overall map. Like, the entire length that this is showing, it's all composed of a set of rooms that is exactly the same size as if they were all separate screens. And that's the reason why it stretches from literally the bottom of the map to the top. We entered this from the bottom and we're going to exit at the top. It's kind of clever how Terry Cavanagh arranged space in this game. They do some interesting things with it. You might also have noticed when we looked at one of the terminals earlier, part of the map was revealed for us. Basically, some of them will show areas in this game which turn out to be places where your buddies are being held. One curious thing about this game is that even though it kind of has a story, it has no villain. Because your guys are just trapped by circumstances, not by any hostile person. That's honestly kind of friendly and nice. I like that.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a children's show. The point is just to find your friends. You don't have to worry about bad guys. And so what that means is everyone you meet is friendly, even though you meet barely any people.
Well,
you know, with this guy, Vermilion, who we just found, there'll only be 3 more. Sorry, what did you say?
You meet a total of 6, right?
Technically meet a total of 5. Viridian is one of the 6.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, look what it says. 3 remain, so there's only 3 people left. You would think that would mean not much left to do, but you would be wrong. However, you know, just as a little starting point, we're going to not find any more people in this particular video. Instead, we're just going to spend the last few minutes fooling around. So we got some more trinkets. As soon as you rescue any member of the crew, you can talk to them at areas they are in the ship. They will also all be each in one area outside the ship if you find them. Like, Verdigris will be on the top of the ship trying to repair it. Vermilion is in an area later on telling you, like, warning you about going into a dungeon. Vermilion is the one person on the ship where I have no idea what he actually does. So, Violet is your pilot. Viridian is the captain, obviously. Later we'll find... what's her name? God, I can't remember. But she is the science officer. Vitellary is the ship's doctor, and Verdigris is basically the engineer. There's a bit of a Star Trek vibe to this whole setup, actually. Everyone has a purpose. Even Vermilion, although I don't know what it is. So have you ever played a game that had this very lo-fi aesthetic before?
I don't think so.
By the way, that weird hashtag thing, I wondered what that was at first. This is actually the top of our ship that we're on. And that hashtag thing is our antenna. So what I'm doing here, I believe, is heading for the next dungeon. Yep, something coming up here. Oh, sorry, I'm not heading for dungeon. This is another place where a trinket is kept. A little more elaborate than the last one. This is several rooms.
Oh, God.
And you gotta do some tight jumping stuff here. Still, one of the easier ones in the game. Basic jumping stuff is always really easy in this game when you compare it with other forms of challenge. However, at this point I was still getting used to the controls again, so it was a welcome, simple challenge. So yeah, I would say, actually, starting with the tower, we have started with the simplest one of them mechanically, because it really is just scrolling, and the mechanics are the same. We will see over the upcoming videos a few more interesting setups. So we'll be waiting for that next episode. See you later, everybody.
Goodbye.